Okay, well, welcome back. We'll get started with our final session. I'm David Sui. I'll be the moderator for this session along with our doctoral student, Ryan Erhard. So our final paper is Audit Process, Private Information, and Insider Trading. Our presenter will be Joseph Schrader from Indiana University. The paper is co-authored with Salman Arif from Minnesota, John Kepler from Stanford, and Dan Taylor from Wharton. Our discussant will be Henry Lorian from the University of Colorado. And just again, 20 minutes for the presentation, 15 minutes for the discussion. And please submit your questions through the Google form in chat. So Joe, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right, let's go ahead and share my slides here real quick. All right, so I first want to start off by saying thank you to the editors of RAS, as well as Patty DeChow, who was serving as our editor on this particular paper. I also want to say thank you to USC, and then of course Henry Lorian for his discussion later, as well as all of you in the audience for sitting back and allowing us to share what we've really enjoyed as a fun paper here. The title is Audit Process, Private Information, and Insider Trading. And this paper is co-authored with Salman Arif from the University of Minnesota, John Kepler from Stanford University, and Dan Taylor from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Now, the genesis of this paper came from an academic conference, the JAR PCAOB conference in 2017. And it was a fun opportunity to sit down, the four of us, and kind of just talk about how the audit process works. It speaks to the power of these types of conferences, and I'm looking forward to getting back to live conferences here soon when the pandemic subsides. But during that conversation, we talked about the typical audit process, and that process goes on throughout the entire year. So shortly after the Q1 is filed, audit planning for the current year's audit begins, typically in May of a calendar year client. And during that audit planning, they're going through the process of identifying key business risks and kind of putting together their game plan to execute the audit for the current year. During the summer, they do internal control testing procedures where they identify deficiencies and notify the client of any types of weaknesses in internal controls with the hopes that they'd be able to remediate that before year end. There's interim procedures where you're testing significant transactions that have occurred during the year. So throughout this year, the auditor is constantly communicating with management. Then we turn to the year-end audit procedures. So shortly after year end, the auditor will start by doing their year-end procedures, testing all these significant accounts, finding audit adjustments, assessing going concern issues, all the different things that go into a standard audit. And there's kind of two different communication events that occur. So one is at the EA release. So when the client decides to release the earnings announcement, the auditor will give an update of where they're at with respect to the audit. Since 2004, primarily the audit's not done at that earnings announcement date, but there is still a status update that occurs where this communication event occurs. But another important communication event is the actual audit report date. So the audit report date signifies the end of the audit. So we all know what the final conclusions are and what the likely contents of that audit report are going to contain. That is then communicated to management, the board of directors, as well as the audit committee that serves as the liaison for the audit. So that is a very important private communication date. Now, the thing is, the contents of that audit report will not be provided until the 10K filing to external stakeholders. So while we were sitting there talking about this audit process, we came to the conclusion that there is this private information event that occurs at the audit report date that is not yet known to the external public. And that got us thinking about the fact that, well, they're in possession of private information. Do you think they trade upon that information? Now, what we are hoping that that's not the case. And a lot of companies, what they do is they put in certain types of voluntary blackout periods to encourage insiders to refrain from trading until the external market has the same type of information. Now, the thing is, most of those voluntary blackout periods from general counsel's perspective lead up to the earnings announcement date, but they do not take into consideration the fact that there could be still material information that's gleaned from the audit process itself. So the four of us sat there and we debated and we said, okay, I think we can all agree that there is this private information advantage. The question is, do they trade on it? And that is the genesis or the research question that we're addressing here in this paper. And this study in many ways is an exploratory analysis, an academic question amongst friends, and then a research analysis to determine whether this is happening or not. And so the primary research question, do corporate insiders exploit the information advantage from the audit process for personal gain and trade based on this private information? Now, from a construct level, we're looking at private information, and that's gleaned from the audit process and whether that impacts corporate insider trading. We operationalize this by looking at modified opinions, which typically contain news that is more unfavorable or bad news events relative to the more status quo audit opinion, which is unmodified. And then we're looking at insider selling and insider buy, sell, and balance. And we're doing a very tight, short window event study around the audit report date to really specifically focus in on the audit report date as an important private information event. So why is this important? Well, I think the first is, to really understand the audit process, and if it is indeed leading to private information advantage for managers and directors relative to outside shareholders, does this actually, result in a disadvantage for external stakeholders? So I think this is a very important question to ask, and it helps us understand the audit process more and what are some of the unintended consequences of it. The other thing, in the spirit of this conference, focusing on ESG, we think that our study specifically speaks to governance and the important role governance plays in making sure it's reducing information asymmetry and leveling the playing field amongst insiders and outsiders with respect to securities trading. The other thing is this paper also makes an important contribution to the audit literature because we're actually looking at the audit report date and we have evidence that we believe shows that it's an important information event that's occurring. We also think that this is an important paper in the sense that we should be maybe having, if regulators take the results at face value, general counsel takes these results at face value, they should be talking about the possibility of consulting with their insiders to make sure that they're not trading in advance on, important information. So maybe possibly extending the voluntary blackout window past the earnings announcement date itself. And then also, since we're looking at unmodified opinions versus modified opinions, and modified opinions contain additional, information, the PCAOB has just recently expanded the audit report to make it, more tailor specific to individual clients, providing greater disclosure. So to the extent that we're capturing these results here, we think that this is also very important for future research to explore how this new PCAOB expanded audit report might be impacting this type of behavior. So prior research with respect to the audit process, well, the modified opinions that we're focusing on here are instances with internal control weaknesses, so material weakness opinions, changes in accounting policies, restatements of prior financial statements, other matters of emphasis. These are types of things that you have the unmodified opinion, which says the financial statements are free of material misstatement, but we're providing additional paragraphs to provide context surrounding these, what we would contend are negative events. Or things that would lead to negative market declines. And that's what the research has pretty much shown. I mean, there's some back and forth on it, but the outcomes of the modified audit opinion literature shows that there are negative market reactions to these types of paragraphs. They're associated with higher costs of capital. And Cherney et al. 2014, the accounting review shows that they're also predictive of reduced financial reporting quality in the future. So again, these are paragraphs that are associated with negative events. The other thing that's very important here is that the audit report date signifies the end of the audit. So per the PCAOB standards, the audit report date is where you've obtained sufficient evidence to support your audit opinion. And the partner has been sufficiently through all the audit reports or all the audit work papers. So basically that signifies the end of the audit and we believe would be a very strong proxy for that communication occurring to the insiders. As far as insider trading, we all know that it's illegal to engage in insider trading of material non-public information. Securities Exchange Act of 3334, Insider Trading Sanctions Act of 84, Insider Trading and Securities Fraud Enforcement Act of 1988 have all reiterated that you should not be trading on material non-public information. But yet we have research out there that shows that insiders do place and profit from these types of trades. And it's more pronounced in situations where we have reduced accounting quality and weaker corporate governance. So what we're doing here is, we're trying to, contribute to this literature and examine a similar setting, but in this case, we're really trying to focus on the specific source that's causing this private information advantage. We believe there are 3 related studies that speak to our current study. So we're building on these prior studies. So Huddard, Key, and Shi, 2004, they look at insider trading and shows that it predicts returns around the quarterly filings. But again, it does not examine the source of that private information, and it's not specifically looking at who is trading. Is it executives? Is it directors? Is it audit committee members? And it's also not focused on whether it's audit related. Scaife, Venman, and Wenger in 2013, they look at internal control material weaknesses as a proxy for weaker corporate governance and an information advantage for insiders. And they do show that there's an increase of insider trading. But again, they're not examining the source of the information advantage. And then Hallman, MD, Kim, and Pereira, they look at going concern opinions and kind of the trading 2 years prior to it. But again, they attribute their results to litigation risk minimization, where we're wanting to look at the whole context of modified opinions themselves. So again, we believe that we contribute to the literature by focusing on the audit process itself and showing that it leads to private information. We use that audit report date as that private information event. And we are also looking at who is likely to be trading by focusing on executives, directors, and audit committee members. Also, we are making sure that our research design holds information environment opacity constant, as well as weak corporate governance with our strict fixed effect structure. So we're trying to really pinpoint on that private information event date to see if we're seeing evidence of increased trading behavior. Now, our sample period is 2003 to 2015, and we're looking at the intersection of Thomson Reuters, CRISP, Compustat, and Audit Analytics. Now, we have a very strict research design because there's always trade-offs. There's external validity versus internal validity. Now, we as a co-author team decided to focus more in on internal validity so that we could specifically speak to this private information date. So we want to make sure that our results are coming back showing that there is pronounced trading around this particular audit report date. So our strict design requires that the audit report date come after the earnings announcement date itself. So we need the audit report date to be after the earnings announcement date, after that voluntary blackout window. We also require that that audit report date occurs 10 days prior to the 10K filing. Again, we're wanting to make sure that the trading behavior we could definitively conclude is related to this private information that's being gleaned by the audit report itself. Now, our first analysis, we focus on looking at the differential trading patterns of modified versus unmodified opinions by looking around the 5 days before and 5 days after the audit report date as the information event. Now, we contend that modified opinions are more likely to convey bad news that insiders would like to avoid, as opposed to unmodified opinions, which typically are more boilerplate and just signify that the results are pretty status quo. Our dependent variables are insider seller, 1 if insiders are net sellers on that day and 0 otherwise. And then we also look at the daily buy-sell imbalance to determine if they're more likely to be selling on a given day. Of course, we put in controls that are consistent with prior insider trading literature. We put a control in for the blackout period, size, book the market, surprise, abnormal return, and volatility. And then we do 2 different types of estimation. So the first is just pooled with the basic controls, but then the second analysis, we put in a very strict fixed effect structure by putting in firm quarter fixed effects so that we can basically hold constant everything and look within a given firm in a given quarter to kind of control for any type of alternative explanation that can be driving our observed results. I think it's helpful to look at the results in figures. So figure 2 here in the paper is looking at the probability of an insider sell around the audit report date itself. The solid line is the modified opinion, whereas the dotted line would be unmodified opinion. So that's what you can see here is that there is a spike in insider trading around that audit report date. And it's more pronounced for the modified opinion, consistent with them trying to potentially avoid losses associated with that particular disclosure. One interesting, observation here that we saw as a co-author team is you do see a little bit of a spike for unmodified opinions. while one might expect it to be flat, you have to realize that with unmodified opinion, there's still information being learned from the audit process, that being unrecorded audit adjustments or control deficiencies or significant deficiencies that wouldn't necessarily be communicated to the public. So you might see a little bit of a spike around there. But again, the fact that we're picking up the more pronounced spike around a modified opinion, I think gives us reasonable evidence to show that there is this pronounced spike, and it is driven by investors or insiders trying to avoid potential losses. We see the same pattern with our buy, sell, and balance as well. And of course, here are the multivariate results with the firm quarter fixed effects. And again, we're seeing consistent patterns with an increase in trading behavior around this information event, the audit report date itself. Now, showing this evidence isn't definitive conclusion that this is insider trading. We have to do additional tests to kind of, come to the conclusion, triangulate the evidence together. So we do some additional things to determine if this is actually insider trading behavior. So the first test we look at is insider trading activity around the 10K date when this audit report is made public. We then do kind of a falsification test by looking at insider trading around Q3, because you have to recall during the quarters, while there is auditor reviews going on, there is no public disclosure of auditor results with respect to Q1, 2, or 3. And then, of course, the last thing is looking at the public stock market reaction around the audit report date to determine if they are trading on, information that's not yet made public to external investors. So with respect to insider trading around the 10K, we do not find any difference in insider trading behavior around the 10K. So that's consistent with the trading behavior occurring at the audit report date itself. We also do not see any type of insider trading activity during Q3. So again, we find the results for the K, but not necessarily for the Q. And I think the most important thing here is that as far as a public market reaction around the audit report date, now remember, this audit report date is not yet known to the public. So the fact that we find no market reaction around this audit report date, but we do see insider trading behavior, is consistent with the story that we're trying to present here. So the next thing, after establishing that we believe that there's a pronounced spike in insider trading, we now want to see who is actually trading. So what we do here is we estimate different 5-day periods. So -10 to -6, -5 to -1, 0 to +5, and +6 to +10. And we separate the trades by managers, directors, and then audit committee members, because audit committee members serve kind of a different function within the board. Now, we have reasons to believe that if insider trading is occurring, management might be front running the directors, because remember, managers are there in the trenches every day with the auditor, having conversation about what's going on with respect to the audit. Whereas directors, they don't get this information until their board meetings or their audit committee meetings themselves. So we do believe there might be differential timing with respect to when trading is occurring for officers versus directors. So in our first analysis here, we're looking at the trading patterns of executives, officers. What we find is that they start increasing their insider trading 5 days before the audit report date. And of course, we still see some trading patterns around the audit report date itself. Now, with respect to the audit committee, we do not find any results here. And as a audit researcher, as a governance researcher, I was actually, I guess, happy to see that fact here, because you have to remember, audit committee members have accounting expertise. Some of them are CPAs, and they may understand, the potential for insider trading laws and so forth. So the fact that we did not find any results here, I think, were comforting to our co-author team. However, for the directors that are not on the audit committee, we did see trading behavior, and it does occur around the audit report date, 5 days after that audit report date. So again, audit report date, that's when we're contending that that's the private information communication event, and we're seeing that they're trading 5 days after that communication event. So in totality, what we're finding with these tests is that executives are more likely to trade in front of directors. And then we're showing that the audit committee is not engaging in this trading behavior. So I think that is kind of interesting results for the collective insider trading literature. Now, the next thing that we do is we look at the different types of modified opinions. We want to see if there's variation in trading based on the types of modified opinions that you will see. So the first analysis is we look at first-time modified opinions. So the first time the market would be aware that there's this additional explanatory language, as opposed to ones that consistently get modified opinions. We contend that the trading behavior would be more pronounced for first-time modified opinions because the insiders would have more of a private information advantage. The next one we look at is modified opinions that result in a future restatement of the current year's financial statements. So again, management would have some sort of private information about the likelihood or potential that there could be reporting quality issues going on in the future. So with respect to the first-time modified opinion, we see that the action is really concentrated in those first-time modified opinions, whereas we don't necessarily see as much action for those that have consistent modified opinion behavior. We also show evidence that it's more pronounced for those that have modified opinions that ultimately lead into a restatement of the current year's financial statements. So again, modified opinions that would be associated with some level of concern regarding the quality of the financial reports. Now, we contend this is evidence that would be consistent with them trying to avoid significant losses going forward. So now that we've established, that there's insider trading, we've looked at who does it, and we've looked at cross-sectional variation in the types of modified opinions, we want to conclude by determining whether this is actually opportunistic trading. So the first analysis we do is determine whether insider trading is predicting the likelihood of a restatement of the current year's financial statements. And what we find in our results is, first, modified opinion is associated with future restatements. So that's almost a replication of Cherney et al. 2014 accounting review. But then we also show that our insider trading behavior around this audit report date is also predictive of future restatements as well. In fact, we show a 35% increase in the restatement likelihood if there's increased insider trading around the audit report date. So I think that clearly is showing that this trading behavior is trying to avoid some sort of future event down the road. We also take a look at whether these insider trades predict future stock returns, i.e. trying to avoid losses. And again, when we look at restatements with modified opinions, relative to industry benchmarks, they are avoiding a significant loss. In fact, we show that on an average sale of $3.7 million, they're avoiding approximately 7.2%. So again, it does seem to suggest that this, selling behavior is associated with avoiding significant losses down the road. So we take this as combined evidence that these trades are indeed opportunistic and advantageous to those insiders that are engaging in them. So in summary, I want to conclude our discussion of our paper here by saying that we believe that audit reports containing a modified opinion are triggering intense insider selling. We're showing an increase in abnormal trading activity 5 days around the audit report date. And then we're showing that this abnormal activity disappears right before the public release of the audit report in the 10K. We're also showing that there is no public market reaction to the audit report date itself. And we're showing that the insider selling around the audit report date is predictive of subsequent restatements. So the combined evidence that we think we're showing here is that the audit process does lead to private information advantage to insiders. It does appear that insiders are likely to take advantage of that private information and trade on that. It looks like those trades are also allowing them to avoid significant losses in the future. So what are the implications of this study, and why is this important to companies and regulators as well as academics? Well, first off, we want to just highlight that this audit process does seem to be producing an information advantage. And there is still private, material information that can be gleaned from the audit process itself. So if we were to talk to general counsels recommending trading policies for their companies, we'd say, yes, the voluntary blackout window to the earnings announcement is very important, but you need to be aware of the fact that there could still be material information gleaned from the audit process. So at least have a pulse on that and make sure that you're providing that type of guidance to your companies. The other thing related to regulators is to make sure that they're aware of this behavior and the fact that it is indeed occurring. And we could probably put certain safeguards in place to try to make sure that we curtail this behavior so that we have a level playing field for all that are investing in our securities markets. The other thing is making sure that, the PCAOB understands the importance of the audit report and that the audit report date is a significant information event and that they need to be aware of the possibilities as well, that this could be eliciting or causing some sort of information disadvantage. So with that, I want to conclude by saying thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share our research with you. And I'm looking forward to Henry Lorien's discussion.
Okay, thanks, Joe, for the very interesting presentation. And Henry Lorien will be our discussant for 15 minutes.
Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hi, everybody. My name is Henry Lorien. I'm coming to you from Colorado. And we just got our, speaking of environmental, social, and governance, we just had our first snow of the year, which is the latest we've ever had it. And it was less than an inch of snow. And so this is a very timely conference. And let me also say it's nice to see you again, Joe, and excellent presentation. And thank you very much to Patty Deschaux and the RAST editors, the RAST staff, and everyone who coordinated this conference. I'm very happy to be here and humbled to be doing a discussion. Let me just start by saying my takeaways from this paper. And I'll get a laser pointer just in case I need it. But basically, you'll find that my takeaways are pretty much what Joe was saying. And so what you might conclude is I was pretty convinced by this study. I think limiting insider trading is a very important component of good governance, which is the G in ESG. Also, based on their evidence, it seems that firms, auditors, and regulators should be aware of the importance of these audit outcomes as a source of material, non-public information that insiders can use. And so this is a new thing to the research. We haven't previously had evidence that auditors themselves are producing material non-public information. The third bullet point is that even though this is a small sample with very restrictive attrition steps, I think it yields interesting and well-identified conclusions that can be used by practitioners. And so the outline of my presentation will be, first, I'll do some general slides on insider trading and kind of linking it to ESG. And then I'll present just by two around the edges comments for this paper. The first comment is asking for some more descriptive information about the modified audit opinions, because there are many different reasons to have a modified audit opinion, and exploring those reasons might be interesting and provide stronger evidence for the study. And the last point on the sample, I have some reason to believe that the setting itself is less and less likely as time has gone by. And so I'll present some evidence on that and some of the implications about that. So first, I just want to show a plot that I got from an NPR article. And it was interesting when I was kind of Googling around to catch myself up on current events in insider trading. I was always finding articles that were very relevant to this study, only to read down in the article and find that the article was actually about this study. And so this study has gotten a lot of press, which isn't surprising because it's a very important issue and the public at large cares about insider trading quite a lot. Anyway, this plot that I'm showing you shows SEC enforcement over time. The blue line is total SEC enforcement actions, and the orange line is those that are related to insider trading. And what I want to point out in this plot is that the enforcement of insider trading is relatively flat over time, where total enforcement has increased over time. And this plot either reveals the priorities of the SEC shifting towards different types of antisocial behavior by firms, or the fact that it's very difficult to prove insider trading cases. And so any help that academics can provide to regulators on making the case for insider trading is very helpful, I think. The second thing I want to show you is a table from someone else's paper. And so this is a paper by Michael Perino, who's a law professor. And what he did was, for a time period, he collected all of the cases prosecuting insider trading. And he listed the types of defendants in those cases. And something I thought was interesting about this table is, I think mainly what we are kind of talking about in this paper are officers and directors trying to profit from their knowledge of inside information, which is actually a very rare type of defendant. The more common types of defendants is SMP, which is a securities market professional, like an analyst, and then friends and family, where likely what is happening is somebody on the inside is tipping friends and family, and then the friends and family get in trouble. But actually, it has become more difficult to prosecute these types of cases over time. In terms of the literature, this is something I'll go pretty quickly through. There is quite a lot of literature on insiders taking advantage of inside information when they're given the opportunity. And that doesn't mean we don't need another paper here. I think it's extremely important to continue to scrutinize and find these settings. But we do have evidence of insider trading when there's merger negotiations happening in private, SEC investigations, really important revenue recognition comment letters, 8Ks, board meetings, and periodic filings. Another line of research talks about the mechanisms that are in place to try to prevent illegal insider trading. The first is insider trading policies, which are set by firms to try to tell insiders when they are allowed to trade and when they are not allowed to trade. And there's actually a recent working paper by our moderator, David. And so it's Gay, Kim, and Sui, 2021. And what they do is they try to figure out what firms' insider trading policies are based on when we observe insider trades. And they conclude that firms actually do a pretty good job of responding to risks when they are setting insider trading policies. And so you could think that this study could inform those insiders who are setting those insider trading policies. We also know that there are 10b-5 trading plans where an executive or an insider would agree to a certain trading plan, because they are constantly getting compensated with stock. They have a lot of this stock and they need to offload it at some point. And so they might, at the beginning of the year, agree to a trading plan. And knowledge of when insiders like to take advantage can help shape the rules around those 10b-5 trading plans, which are currently under discussion. Okay, now I want to talk specifically about the setting. The setting is between the fourth quarter press release and the 10K is when the audit report is filed. There is the firm, there's an insider in the firm. The auditor walks in with an audit report. And the key source of variation is whether the audit report is modified. And if the audit report is modified, then we see trading by the insider with outsiders. Okay. Now, important to the setting is that at around the time of the audit report, the auditors are briefing the insiders about the contents of the audit report. And so there's probably a board meeting going on somewhere near the date of the audit report. This becomes important when we're talking about what is the nature of the modified audit opinion. Because it could be, at the time of the audit report, they are learning something about the firm that could be the subject of the modification, but they're learning it from someone else. So when the authors examine modified audit reports, they examine unqualified opinions with additional language, internal control weaknesses, and disclosure control weaknesses. They also look at dimensions of modifications. Was it a first-time modified opinion? Did a future restatement occur? And did an abnormal modification occur? What I would argue is that these dimensions represent important modifications, certainly, but not necessarily more audit-related modifications. The authors all, admittedly do a great job of identification in this study, but to the extent they want to really make the case that audit-related information is sparking the insider trade, they might want to look at the dimensions, further dimensions of the modification. And so I say they might consider giving more descriptive information about modifications to make a stronger case that the non-public information was audit-related. So here's a related study, Cesarni, Schmidt, and Thompson, 2014, where they look at explanatory language in an audit report. And some of these are very audit-related. As you can see, there's even a category for audit-related. But some of them are not, such as an emphasis of a matter of a merger or a lawsuit, for example. And I have two examples on a slide here, where here would be a non-audit modification where the company is talking about substantial losses and impairments, okay? And that's the auditor talking about these substantial losses and impairments. And it's probably true that the board can find out about those from other sources. Whereas this one down here is an audit-related modification, where they're saying they did not audit the financial statements of a subsidiary of the company. That is the type of information that might only be learned from the auditor. Okay, my final comment is on the sample size. It's a small sample size, 1948 from 2003 to 2015. And that's not a problem because I think we can learn a lot of powerful conclusions even from small samples because it's very well identified. The sample requires 1 day after the earnings release until the audit report and 10 days between the audit report and the 10K. And this is what really surprised me is 10 days between the audit report and the 10K. And so I just did I didn't do a great job of it, but I just used the RDQ, the earnings announcement date, and then the audit analytics audit report and filing date to make my own sample reconstruction. And I didn't do any control variables. And so I have a slightly larger sample size than they have. But I observed a trend in the sample where I had a lot of observations in the earlier period and then almost 0 observations after 2009. And it's still possible that I made a mistake here. And I thought it could be a mistake, but I did find some evidence consistent with this trend, which was a paper by Glover, Hansen, and Seidel. And their paper was exactly about this. The title was, "How has the change in the way auditors determine the audit report date changed the meaning of the audit report date?" And they find that a few events that occurred over time have aligned the audit report date much more closely with the 10K date. And so the y-axis here is the number of days between the audit report and the 10K. And you can see back in 2003, on average, there were around 25 days between the audit report and the 10K. And that reduced almost to 0 in 2009. And one of the main reasons that the audit report date has been aligned with the 10K date is that with FAS 165, companies are now required to evaluate subsequent events up until the 10K date. And so auditors usually don't sign the opinion until then. And so it might be useful just to talk about if there is a change in whether this setting has a lot of observations in it in recent periods of time. That doesn't mean that insiders can't still learn from auditors. It's just not as easy to detect it because the audit report date falls on the date of the 10K. Okay, so in conclusion, I think it's very clear that limiting insider trading is a very important component of good governance. Studies like this guide governance and regulatory actions to identify and limit unfair practices like insider trading. And also, I agreed with Joe when he said when the audit report has changed recently with these critical audit matters, that has the potential to make the audit reports much more informative. And I wouldn't be surprised if managers are learning about these audit reports before the 10K date and with the potential to trade on that material non-public information. So I think this is a very important topic as a current event. Thank you very much. Appreciate you listening.
So thanks a lot, Henry. Very insightful discussion. So we have a few minutes for Q&A here. I guess let me just start by sort of a few questions, sort of building off I think Henry's last point there in terms of like the timing and regulatory changes over your sample period. There's several questions sort of asking about what's going on with these, I think unusually long lags that you find between the audit date and the annual report date, as well as taking a look at, can you split your sample up into different time periods? Can you show your results hold for particularly the later years? Whereas Henry showed that there's this significant decrease, it seems like in the
yeah, and I've done quite a bit of work in that area, and the Glover et al. Paper I think is a great paper in the sense of showing kind of what's happened with audit report dates over time. And some of that is related to subsequent events. Some of it's also there's this concurrent filing phenomenon where 10Ks are filed the same day as the EA. So there's been a lot of different changes in the patterns of disclosures over time. But it goes back to that internal validity, external validity trade-off. So in this particular study, we wanted to make sure that we had a tight research design to definitively conclude that we think there's trading around the audit report date. And we did have that in our sample period, which ends in 2015. But there's no reason for me to believe this isn't happening for those that aren't in our sample. It's going to be harder to definitively conclude it's happening because every company, there is this communication to the board, there is this communication to management about the definitive contents of the audit report itself. And then it's at that point that they can potentially start engaging in insider trading. So if we were to loosen our research design, well, we could still find insider trading behavior. It's just going to be harder to definitively say it's related to the audit process itself. So while we do see that trend over time, I'm not comfortable saying that it's not happening. I just say it'd be harder, as Henry said, harder to detect in a research design that we've set up, right? So again, it's always these trade-offs between external validity and internal validity. I do know that we've done, we've relaxed a lot of those assumptions. We've taken the audit report date closer to the 10K date, and we still find evidence of this behavior. So we did look at, the sensitivity of our research design. We just felt that this tight design gave us definitive evidence to make kind of that strong, statistical collusion validity, that argument that this is happening, right?
Okay, yeah. So, and then I guess a couple of questions, sort of, I guess broadly speaking, related to like the materiality of the audit report. So Clive Lennox has a question about there's a paper in RAST from a few years ago, Myers et al., that showed that there's no significant market reaction to going concern opinion modifications, which is probably the most serious of the modifications that you're looking at. And so he's got two questions there. First, is the lack of market reaction there, do you think it's due to sort of information leakage coming out through this insider trading that you are finding? And then secondly, why, given the results in that study, why are you looking at audit opinion modifications? Given this lack of market reaction, would it make sense to look at more extreme outcomes like auditor resignations, where there's more, there's evidence of a stronger market reaction to those types of events?
So one point of clarification. So while I did talk about going concerns as modifications, we in our primary analysis removed the going concern opinions for a couple of reasons. So one, prior research has kind of shown there may or may not be market reactions to it. And then two, some of the research has shown that insider trading activity is less likely because going concerns can kind of be associated with increased likelihood of lawsuits and litigation, right? So the primary focus of our study is more on the restatements, internal controls, as well as other modifications. As far as looking at other information events like 8Ks with auto resignations, I agree with Clive, that would be kind of interesting to look there. But we were wanting to kind of focus primarily on this audit process itself, and that was kind of the direction we took with this study. But you could potentially look at maybe insider trading around those 8K events. But then again, we don't definitively have a private information event. So when did they decide that they were going to change auditors? And, so this setting gives us a nice kind of proxy for that communication event, which is why we chose the audit report date itself. And then as far as like, is this opportunistic or not? I think, adding that additional piece at the end of the paper, which is something it's kind of evolved over time, adding that piece to the paper, showing that this is predictive of future restatements and, kind of corroborating what Cherney et al. Shows in the 2014 TAR paper, which is, I think, a really, good paper in that case. And then showing that they're avoiding, significant losses in that case. I think that kind of is what we're speaking to in terms of opportunism and avoiding those potential losses. So.
Okay, and then maybe one more question, just sort of on how, I guess, fitting the paper into the literature. This is from Frank Chang at Yale. He's asking about sort of in what sense is a negative audit opinion different from any other sort of negative news that might come out, and the insider trading patterns around that. So for example, we saw in the previous session evidence that insiders sell ahead of bad news as well.
Yeah.
So if you could just sort of clarify that point.
No, exactly, and I think if you go to the surveys, it's like, well, do they trade in advance of bad news? I mean, we do have a lot of evidence that suggests that's the case, but I think it's also important to start taking the literature towards identifying the source. And in this case, that's where we think our contribution is. So we think we're making more of a contribution to the audit side by understanding the audit process and how this all unfolds in terms of communication, but then also being able to identify the specific source of this information and providing a tight research to show that they are trading on this particular type of information is the contribution we think we're making to the insider trading literature. And then, of course, from a research standpoint, I think it's important to do more investigative research. And I know, John and Dan have a paper that came out in JE calling for more investigative research, because we can go in there and look at these, anomalies or abnormal, situations. This is the stuff that we can bring to light so that general counsels and company can be, better at advising their clients, and regulators could be more aware of what's going on. So by providing this type of research, I think it's important. So again, we don't just need one insider trading paper. I think we need to be looking at a lot of different settings to see if this is actually occurring, so that we have empirical evidence, so that we as an academy can start helping other people to lead to the right regulatory outcomes, right? So.
Okay, so thanks. And I think we are out of time at this point. So we have a number of questions that we didn't have time to get to, and we'll forward to you those separately.
Thank you so much,
so that will wrap up sort of this session. Thanks to Joe and Henry again for excellent presentations and discussions. And thanks to all our presenters and discussants, and to everyone in the audience over the past couple of days for all your great questions. What we'd like to do now is to ask you to vote on the best paper for the conference. So a poll should be popping up shortly. I think there it is now. Take a moment to go ahead and vote there. Select your favorite paper for the conference. A few more seconds here. Okay, so I think all the votes are in for the best paper award. The other vote we would like to hold right now is the vote for the best discussant. So the poll for that, I think, should be coming up shortly as well. Okay, looks like all the votes are in for best discussant as well. So thanks everyone for your participation in that. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Patty.
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm just going to share a few statistics and updates for RAST with you, but whilst the polling gets organised. In the past, the polling used to take ages to work out the results, but we'll just pretend that's still the case. So I can give you a quick update on RAST. Let me just start with announcing that we have some new editors at RAST. So welcome to these new editors. Elizabeth Blankspore, which you saw presenting a paper earlier today from University of Washington, Yonja Ertmer from University of Colorado Boulder, and Geyser Ormazbel from IESE Business School. And you probably are aware that, because you saw Beth's presentation, her research focuses on the influence of information costs and technology on corporate disclosure and market participants. Or I guess these got mixed up for some reason. Yonja, she looks at work on corporate governance and disclosure, and Geyser looks at, he's also looking at management compensation and banking and sustainability reporting. I guess that was mixed up. And then I'll just turn to RAST statistics. So welcome aboard anyway to those people. I was going to just show you our acceptance rates for the last couple of years. So these numbers come from Springer, and they're verifiable. And they only had up till July 2021. And you can see that our acceptance rate is around 13% in 2019, 10% 2020. And then it looks like it went up a bit in the first half of 2021. Maybe we were all happier after the pandemic went by. And you can see that it takes us about 90 days to make our first decision. Oops. And for the final acceptance takes nearly 2 years. And then I just wanted to let you know about the most downloaded papers at RAST. So Springer, you can download papers from the Springer website, and so they keep track of that. And you'll see that, and these are the papers published in 2018, 2020, Quality minus Junk, Improving the Measures of Real Earnings Management by Anup, Asset Volatility with Maria Correa et al. And then we have some financial reporting fraud paper and the Narcissism is a Bad Sign paper and the Changing Implication of R&D. So you get an idea of what kind of work that people are interested in, and you'll notice that they're all open access. And so one thing I'd like to remind people of or encourage is that if you make your paper open access, then this really helps increase its impact. People are more likely to be able to read it because they don't have to pay to download it. So over all years, you can see that it's a similar type of group with the addition of Scott Richardson's Overinvestment of Free Cash Flow paper. So just an interesting little insight. You can see where our papers are getting downloaded from, sort of Asia Pacific, Europe, and North America mainly. And then another important metric for RAST is citations. And you can see that our citation metric has increased over time, how many people are citing our papers. But this is really a critical measure for journals. And so I would like to remind people, if you care about RAST and you want it to improve in its status, then please try to cite RAST papers as you move forward with your research, because it affects impact factors and so forth. And then looking at most cited RAST papers over the 2018-2019 period, Quality minus Junk is there, and then you can see that Beth's paper with Ed DeHaan and Christina Zhu on robo-journalism is up there, so that's nice to see. And then Consequences of Adopting an Expanded Order Report in the UK by Elizabeth and Miguel and Kay and Maria. And then the Narcissism is a Bad Sign paper on the CEO signature size, and then the Financial Reporting Fraud paper with Dan and so forth. No idea why that's ringing. And turning now to other areas. So other places that RAST papers can have an impact is through social media outlets. So they keep track of news stories and tweets. And you can see that We don't get that many news stories, but our tweets have increased. And if you have a look at the most impactful paper on these measures, you'll see that Jeremy Bertomeau's actual discussion of machine learning improves accounting is up there, along with the Supra of return predictive signals by Jeremiah, John Hand, and Frank Zhang. And then the speaking of short-term disclosure horizons and managerial myopia. So that's another paper that's quite well cited in the literature. And then the narcissism is a bad sign. So again, you just kind of get an idea of what papers are out there. And I would also like to let people know that we have a Twitter account at the encouragement of Springer. The RAS Journal has one. And so if you have a Twitter account, then please join us there so you can keep up with our exciting news. And also if you have any news yourself, then let us know. Another final little update that I want to give you is no one ever phones me, so I have no idea why that happened. It's an organisation called Responsible Research in Business and Management, and this is a group of academics that are from all the different fields and trying to improve the relevance of research that's done at business schools. And I feel like we've tried to do that with this conference, try to have more impactful research that helps address problems in society. And if you're interested in this motivation for research and continuing this line, then think about joining this organisation or network of academics and continuing this endeavour. So with that little update, we can get to our thank yous for the conference. And I would like to thank the RAS editors for all their work over the last year and couple of years. We really appreciate it. It's a lot of work, as many people know, reviewing these papers and finding referees and so forth. So thanks very much. And then also our associate editors, I really appreciate your help. They do a lot of referee reports for us, and we're very grateful. And we also have a lot of referees who are ad hoc referees, and I don't want to forget you guys too, because you really help out. As new areas come in to become more important, then we kind of expand to new people. So thanks again. And also thank you to George Weatherman and Cambridge Business Publishers for sponsoring the conference. And then we have an organising committee. Richard Sloan, Mark Solomon, Laurie, and thank you for helping me with this conference organisation. Laurie and I met many Fridays to talk about the conference. Often I'd end up arriving at my PhD class late because we kept chatting. So eventually I just asked her to join the PhD class so that I'd get there on time. And thanks very much to Rosita. You probably have come in contact with Rosita quite a lot. She keeps the whole RAST machine going, and she's been really instrumental in getting this conference organised and helped with the webpage and agenda. And Riley too, with getting this conference up and running, and Crystal and Barry for helping us with the Remo. And then also a big thank you to the authors. I thought the presenting authors all did a really great job with getting their message across really clearly, and the discussants raised some great points. And I really appreciate everyone putting in so much effort. And the USC moderators, it's a bit of a bigger role being a moderator at this conference, so thanks again. And to the PhD note takers who kind of organised the questions and set them along. And to our USC Remo hosts. And of course to the participants, because we couldn't have the conference without you guys coming. So thank you very much to all those people. Now I just want to talk about the awards. So we have a referee award, a best paper award, and best discussant, which you guys just voted on. As far as the referee award, you might not know about this, but I think Paul Fisher introduced this award because we don't pay people to be referees because it's too much paperwork. None of us really want to get into that. So instead what we do is we have this random draw of all the referees, the associate editors and referees who've done a lot of reports in the last 2 years. And we do a random draw, and the winner gets $5,000. So that's supposed to be an incentive. I'm sure there's a model that shows that this has got strong incentive effects. Anyway, so imagine a drumbeat. So the winner of this year's best, the random draw, I suppose, is Stephen Stubbins, the University of Utah. So thank you, Stephen. I'm sure he'll be surprised. Hopefully he's somewhere around and we can see his happy face.
I'm here and I'm buying drinks to celebrate. You can meet me outside my office in 30 minutes.
Oh yes, well, thank you,
You're all
Stephen.
invited.
I'm glad that it ended
I'll
up
be
being
there.
you, because you've done a lot of referee reports for us, and so it's great that you end up being the random referee draw winner. So good, thanks for coming. Now the next thing we're going to do is have a look at these poll results for best paper and best discussant. And this kind of thing is always a little bit difficult, because I felt like the authors all did a really good job, and it was very hard to pick the best paper. And so, you kind of wonder what biases come in, recency biases or biases here and there. So, and the discussants did a great job. So, it kind of leads me to think about research on goal setting and loss avoidance. And I'm like, well, whoever wins the best paper or best discussion will be like, yeah, I put a lot of effort in, and I'm glad it got recognized, which is true. But then the people who don't win, they might feel bad, and I don't want anyone to go away feeling bad, because I really feel like everyone did such a great job. So I just want to let you know, if you don't win, we still love you here, and I really appreciate all your efforts. So I think that's all I really have to say, and we can move over to the best paper and so forth. So is this the slide? Yes. Okay. So the best paper was, it was Beth Blakesmoor's paper, Real-Time Revenue and Firm Disclosure. So congratulations, Beth. I have no idea who was going to win, by the way, so this is very exciting. And Brad and Joe and Christina for your paper winning the award. I don't know whether we got Beth anywhere around, so she.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. Wow.
Are you
Surprise.
crying? You should be crying and saying,
I know.
I like to. I want to thank my mother. Oh my God.
I want to thank my co-authors. Brad and Christina are on as well. Joe had to step away, but yeah, thank you.
And the other people who didn't win, I thought your papers were really great, as well as yours, Beth, of course. And now we turn to best discussant. Real-time revenue and firm disclosure. Yay! Lorian Stice Lawrence from University of Southern California. So
Hooray!
congratulations, Lorian. You must, maybe you reinforced it by having everyone, click on the button to say awesome.
Subliminal
This is
message.
the kind of biases I'm talking about. I don't know whether you're up on the screen, but that was great. So congratulations, Lorian. I can't see you. But I'm sure you're there somewhere. All right, so again, thank you so much to all the presenting authors and all the people who submitted papers to the conference, and maybe your paper didn't get in, but we really appreciate it, you submitting, and hopefully it will get through the review process and all that kind of stuff. And thanks for the presenters, and thanks very much to the discussants, because it's so much work discussing a paper, and yet, you don't get a publication or anything out of it. So we really appreciate all your efforts. And thanks again to the moderators and to all the participants. So I hope you enjoyed the conference, and feel free to reach out to RAST if you want to give us any suggestions of improvements and so forth. And with that, we can conclude the conference, and you're welcome to go over to Remo and chat with people. We have that on next. I think the links will be in the chat. Other than that, you can leave, and I'll stay here for a few minutes to
Can we give a big round of applause to Patty too?
and
So
to
thank you.
Rosita. Rather, yeah.
Very well done. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.